station. And I want you to honk your horn if you're in the car and you're a fan of Walt Disney classic productions such as Bambi, Fantasia, Cinderella, and even more. Did you know that a Columbus, Mississippi native was responsible for the visual effects and animations of those iconic films? I didn't know. And so I thought we'd learn a little bit more about Josh Meador. And joining us today on Good Things is historian and columnist Rufus. Hey, Rufus.
Hey, how are you?
I am doing well, and it's been a minute since we had you on the show, so welcome back. I enjoy getting your columns every week that you write on, or you have in the Sunday paper for the Dispatch there in Columbus. Is that correct? Does it come out on Sundays?
It comes out, that's right, it comes out on Sundays.
So this last one that you wrote about was reminding us or sharing us the story about Josh Meador. Am I saying his last name correctly?
It's Meador.
Meador. I figured I would screw it up. Josh Meador. And I had no idea that a Mississippian was connected to such, iconic films like Bambi, Fantasia, and Cinderella. How did you get wind of his story to share it this past week in the paper?
My grandfather had known him and his father, and so I grew up hearing about him and hearing about his work at Disney. One of the interesting things is he was the co-winner of the 1954 Oscar for the special effects in 20,000 Leagues Under the Sea. But the Oscar was issued in the name of the studio. They didn't put names on animation until 1965. He was also a director of Make Mine Music, which won the Cannes Film Festival for animation in 1946. So he has a really interesting history. He started with Disney in 1936. In 1940, he became head of the special effects department, and he worked there until he became semi-retired in 1960 and then died in 1965. But like you said, the movies he did are unbelievable. Fantasia, Pinocchio, Bambi, Song of the South, Cinderella, Snow White, just about every famous Disney feature you've heard of, he had a role in.
And he was with Disney for almost 30 years. I know you mentioned he was born in Greenwood, but he was raised in Columbus. What moved the Meador family, or the Meador family, to Columbus?
His father was auditor for the C&G Railroad, and the main office was in Columbus, and he'd been working in Greenwood there, and then moved to Columbus to be at the main office. So that's about how he moved. He moved when he was 7. He graduated from Lee High here in Columbus, and people who knew him said he was always getting in trouble because he drew characters and figures in all the textbooks.
If only they knew.
One of those, I've looked around.
I was going to say, if anybody had one of those textbooks now, you would be proud of it.
They would be. One of the interesting things, though, that he was noted for with animation effects is he would try to create the effect in real life and then draw it. And I knew his son, Phil, who actually did special effects for Splash and a number of other prominent movies. He told me the story that one day his father came home from work and had a little bottle of glycerin solution with a little plastic wand and handed it to his wife and said, "Take this, and I want you to crawl around on the floor on your hands and knees and blow bubbles." She did that. He then drew her picture blowing bubbles, and the next day he went back to Disney, and her image was used as the basis for Cinderella scrubbing the floor surrounded by bubbles. And he took the reflections of his wife in the bubbles from the night before and used that to create the bubble effect.
What makes his
Very
story,
innovative.
yeah, what makes his story so interesting, and one that we should all be proud of, the fact that, he's from Mississippi, is the fact that it was innovative. I mean, you didn't have the computers, the digital sort of animation then, and he didn't draw the characters, right, Rufus? Josh was, he made them move. He was the animator behind it, so he wasn't the original artist.
Yeah, he's not that well known, and I talked to Dave Smith a number of years ago, his archivist for Disney, and said, with everything that Josh Meador did, I'm surprised that he's not better known. And Smith responded saying, well, he didn't draw Donald Duck. He didn't draw Mickey Mouse. The only thing he did, he was the person responsible for making them come to life on the screen when you saw them.
But without that part, you don't get, those classic. You don't get any of it, right? Like you don't get
That's right.
the feeling of it. You don't get to feel like it's come to life, or you get to know the characters, or the mannerisms or the characteristics that you grow to love and remember. So he needs to be remembered, Rufus.
The type thing he did the scene with the whale in the water in Pinocchio. In Bambi, he did the storm scene and the fire scene. So what he was doing was the special effects that really made the movie come alive.
How did he get to Disney? How did Josh Meador get from, Columbus, Mississippi, all the way to working with Walt Disney for 30 years?
Interestingly, in 1935, he was offered an appointment to Annapolis, but decided to go to the Chicago Art Institute instead. And there, one of his friends, when they graduated, said that he was going to California to meet this Disney guy and see if he could get a job. And Josh said, well, I'll go with you. His friend didn't get the job, but Josh did. His first work for Disney was in the short feature, The Old Mill, where Josh illustrated a spider web and a storm and the dew on the ground and the rain falling. And from that point on, he and Disney became friends. And he painted also. That was his hobby. Disney collected his paintings and had over 50 of them. Fred McMurray collected his paintings. And both Lyndon Johnson and Dwight Eisenhower had his paintings in the White House. So he was multi-talented.
Do you know if any of Josh Meador's paintings are anywhere at the Mississippi Art Museum or at any of the other museums throughout Mississippi?
There's one of his animations. It's a raindrop at the Museum of Mississippi History. Probably the most interesting one, though, after Josh died and then his wife died, the family gave the city of Columbus a painting of Walt Disney's ranch, Smoke Tree Ranch, that had hung in Disney's house and had been given back to Ms. Meador when Walt died by Walt's widow. They gave that to Columbus, and it's now hanging in the office of the Columbus Convention and Visitors Bureau in the lobby, where everybody can see a painting of Disney's ranch that actually hung in his house.
Oh, that's really cool. That gives you a reason to stop by and pop in and say hello and see a little bit of history there that you might not otherwise have known. If they're looking over at supertalktv.com, Rufus, you sent us a wonderful photo of Josh Meador, and I'm going to assume his son and maybe his wife in a painting. Set the scene for us there. What's on that photo?
That was one summer in the 1950s when Josh was visiting his mother back in Columbus. And he painted that house, which is in Columbus. It's the portrait. And then the one on the floor is also from Columbus, and did drawings of several other houses. That painting was given to the library by the Meador family, along with 2 drawings, production drawings from movies by the Meador family. So those are there to be seen at the library. Another interesting thing, though, is the Disney animators were always playing jokes on each other.
Ooh, that's a good place to make you pause, Rufus. I love a good joke story. So we're going to get more with Rufus Ward coming up next here on Good Things.